Welcome to one and all to the Delta Wordweavers for May 8th. Today is Mother's Day, and nonetheless, we have gathered and we're going to share some family stories today. So welcome one and all. Our first story is from Beverly Schwartz, and she comes to us from New York. We're always happy to hear her. She's got interesting stories. And today on the, she's a retired teacher. Today on our theme, we're talking about when the families have to say goodbye. We visit them or we're with them, and sometimes the goodbye is for a short time. Sometimes, you'll see them before too long. Sometimes, you won't see them for a long time. And we didn't know that about the COVID. Like when we said goodbye and those before it started, that was a shock to all of us. But sometimes we know it's a forever goodbye, and that is what it is. But we do handle these in different ways. And today we welcome Beverly Schwartz for her story called Saying Goodbye. Beverly.
Hi, everyone. Happy Mother's Day. Could I be spotlighted, please? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Everyone's been glued in the last 2 months almost to the TVs about Ukraine. What has bothered me the most and brought back memories that I haven't thought of for a while, or maybe purposely didn't think of it for a while, is the husbands and wives in the trains and putting their hands up to say goodbye to each other without being able to touch or kiss or hug. And their children watching on, and their little hands on the glass too, saying goodbye to their daddy or uncle or brother. It really affected me when I saw that. It brought back a memory of a long time ago about me and my father. My father's name was Edward Nathan Schwartz. He grew up in Pittsfield, Mass. In high school, he dropped out, joined the Navy, and fought in the Pacific War, World II. And he never talked about it or answered any questions. He refused to. My mother grew up in Albany, New York. She went to high school, but she desperately had wanted to go to college, but there was absolutely no money. So it's New York State's capital is Albany, and the state workers worked there, and she got a job for the state. My father loved dancing, and my mother loved dancing. And where did they meet? At the Ukraine Hall in Albany, New York. They had a live band and they welcomed all people. You did not have to be from Ukraine to go there. And they met dancing. And every week their romance grew as they danced and twirled and sang to all the songs. And they got engaged and they got married. Now my father moved to Albany and he had no job. So he took a job as a shoe salesman in a store called Corbett's. He ended up managing the store and working there for 39 years. Imagine that. My mother worked for the state, and she was a real smart person. And she, kept taking tests and getting into different offices throughout her career. She ended up in Governor Rockefeller's secretary pool. And one day, Governor Rockefeller was very friendly with his secretaries in the pool because he was always asking them to stay late or do favors for him. He came up to my mother, who had gotten to know well, and said, "Becky, would you be my personal secretary? Mine's leaving. Do you think you can handle the job?" Oh, of course. My mother had finally gotten to the point that she wanted to be as a professional. Now, there was 3 of us kids, myself, my brother Paul, and my brother Bruce. And we were kids, and the phone rang. We'd go, "Hello, what do you want?" Or whatever. Well, we had now had to learn etiquette because Governor Rockefeller said, "I like to go to Maine and I don't like to be disturbed on my vacations. All phone calls are going to your house, Becky. And if you can't handle it, only then do you call me, and it better be a real emergency." So my mother handled and ran New York State for part of the time when Rockefeller was out of the Capitol. And we had to say, instead of, hey, Mom, hello, this is the Schwartz residence. Well, the first thing they did when we were born is got us college accounts at the local banks. And every single paychecks, they started putting whatever they could into their paychecks. And we all ended up going to college. And they worked hard and we learned a good work ethic. Well, they were getting older. And my father, after 39 years selling shoes, had health problems. And he said to all of us, I've worked enough years. I've seen enough women's feet, men's feet, kids' feet. I've had it. I'm retiring. And so he did. And my mother said, you know, I've worked all my life too. I want a second childhood. I want to really live now and see the world and do things. So what do they do without telling us? Well, they sold the house, packed up, and called us. Oh, 2 weeks, we're going down to Florida. Oh, how long, Mom? Oh, we're going to live there full time. We just sold the house. Come get whatever you want that we don't want. And you can come visit us from now on. We were shocked, but they did. And they went down and they had a second childhood. And for about 14 years, because they were both around 60 years old, they loved it. They danced every single week there. They went on cruises. They went all over. They had a great retirement. Then my mother at 75 was not feeling well, and they put her in the hospital. And my father calls and says, Mommy's in the hospital. They're doing some tests. They might do some kind of treatment for her. And I said, okay, I'll arrange to come down right away. Well, 2 days later, I had just booked a trip too. My father called me very early in the morning. Dad, what's wrong? You're calling me too early. It's only about 5 o'clock. Mommy died last night. Oh my God. I never got to say goodbye. I never got to talk to her, even in the hospital. And I was going to go down and see her. I was devastated. And we flew my mom up from Florida to Albany, and we had a funeral. Well, what was my father going to do? He says, well, I live in Florida. I have a lot of friends there now, and I can go dancing all the time. And all the widowers are already asking me to go for dinner. So he was pretty happy. So he says, what I'll do is this. Your mom and I always came up late spring to the late fall, and we'd stay with you and with your other brother nearby. And we're going to go to Texas with your other brother, Bruce, with all the grandkids for Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. And then I'm going to go back to the warm weather because I can't take the cold weather. That was a fair thing to do. So he did that for a few years until he was about 79 years old, about 4.5 years. And he wasn't feeling well. And he came up to see me. And I said, Dad, when was the last time you saw a doctor? Well, you're going to go up here. So I made arrangements and they saw him. And he says, he needs really some tests to decide what really is his problem. So I called my brother and she says, don't worry, Bev, when you come down here, I'll have all the doctor's appointments and tests ready to be done. And that summer that he was here, before he went down to my brother in Texas, he said, Bev, I'm going to call my friend Eddie, not Eddie, my best friend Harry. He grew up with Harry in Pittsfield. And Harry drove, you know, he's in his 80s. And the two of us met him and he hopped in the car with us and we went to Pittsfield. And you know what they wanted to do? The only thing they wanted to do was go to their parents' grave sites that were all together in the Jewish cemetery in Pittsfield. They didn't know how to get there. I'm driving around. So finally I saw a policeman say, hey, do you know where this graveyard is? Follow me. I would never have found it if it wasn't the police escort. And there they were, and they went over and saw all their friends and relatives that were buried there. And my father said, take a picture next to me in my parents' grave sites, and snapped the picture. And to this day, gets on my dresser. I wake up seeing my father next to his parents' gravestone every morning. Well, I sent my father down to Texas. And my brother called me about a couple weeks later. And he goes, Bev, we got all the test results back from Dad. He has cancer. It's terminal, and he does not want to do anything about it. We have to respect it, I said. And so we agreed. I said, I will fly down next week. I have a vacation from school. I'll spend the week there. But Bev, we're going to be working and the kids go to, sports at night. Are you sure you want to be? It's going to be a pretty boring week. I said, I want to come. So off I went and flew. I didn't know what the week was going to be like. But I had the best week of my whole life with my father that week. We talked, we told stories, we took walks, we played with the dog. We did puzzles. We talked about what we wanted to do, still in our lives, or what we wanted to still accomplish. When Dancing with the Stars was on TV, we got up and we danced and sang every single dance on that show. And when they announced the winners, guess who won? We did, and we celebrated with ice cream. We had a wonderful time, but the week ended too short. One thing he did ask me during that week is, I can smell in my mind your mother's noodle kugel, which is noodles and cottage cheese and all different things like that. My mother just had no recipe, a shtickle of this and a shtickle of that. I said, I'll try to make it. And I put it together the best I could. And we put it in the oven and it smelled just like my mother's kugel. And when it was done, he looked at me, can we taste it now? I said, oh yeah. So we took each other's bowl and we tasted it. Ugh, it was horrible. We threw it away, but we got the smell of how it was when we heard my mother doing it. Excuse me. Well, it was time to say goodbye. I had not had time to say goodbye to my mother. It always had bothered me. But now it was our time to say goodbye. Just like the people on the train not knowing what was going to happen. We both knew, though, this time what was going to happen. I would probably never see him again. We hugged and we kissed and we toasted to being Dancing with the Star champions. And finally, just before I started unhugging him, beep, beep goes the horn. Come on, Dad, we have to catch a plane. Hurry up. It's my brother shouting from his car window. We both rolled our eyes. I don't think he understands what's happening here, my father said. I gave him one last hug and he touched my hair. And I turned around and I started walking away. And all of a sudden, I heard my father calling me. Only my parents called me this. Bevy, Bevy, turn around. Hurry up, turn around. Why was he calling me Bevy? That's the only name that they would ever call me. I turned around thinking, oh my God, something's wrong. And then he started singing a song that he used to sing when I was a little girl sitting on his lap. It's a Jewish song. I love you, a bushel in the peck, a bushel in the peck, and a hug around the neck. And he threw a kiss at me. I caught it. And I went, and he caught it. And we both smiled at each other. And I turned around and had to get into the car and looked as long as I could as I drove away. Now, behind me is a sunflower, which represents Ukraine, and the blue butterfly. Those are their colors. In Ukraine, saying goodbye to people are still unknown if it's the last time or it will be other times that they get to see each other again. We should not forget the people of Ukraine or any person in the world or countries that are at war with each other and how sad it can be to say goodbye. I'd like to now end the story with a quote from Jimi Hendrix, who's buried in Washington State and wrote these lyrics. He was a songwriter, singer. There will be peace when the power of love is greater than the love of power. And I want to say it one more time. There will be peace when the power of love is greater than the love of power. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Beverly for that special story, timely and caring, and touches us for us all to remember everyone. We're all connected in the world, and I went to a Ukraine concert benefit last night and also got experience of uniting many people in our city here for the good of the Ukraine people. But yeah, it stems from that family. It starts with family, that we learn how to, be with each other, and you enjoyed your last time with your dad. You put the positive on it. Both of you did. And that's what we need to do in our lives, is put the positive on life. And we're here today putting a positive on life in our busy, busy week. Thank you, Beverly, so much for that story.
Thank you.
Okay, our next teller is the one and the only Marian Ferrante. She is a retired speech pathologist who has worked with children of all age in schools, as well as with adult people who have cancer and are stroke patients. It's too much for me to see my whole face there. There we go. Okay. She's worked in the schools as well as with adult cancer and stroke patients under the care of the home health services. She once worked with a 97-year-old stroke patient who told her about her childhood. She lived in the town of Nortonville, which has been absorbed into the Black Diamond Mines Regional Park. Marian has led Delta Wordweavers for 35 years. Go, Marian. Keep us going. She enjoys telling fractured fairy tales, tales about local history, and personal stories. And her family story today is entitled The Babysitter. Yay, Marian.
I'm looking for my own spotlight.
Hi, David.
Thank you, Sarah. A family story, The Babysitter. I was 5 years old when I called out, "Sis, tonight Dad says we're going to go to the Skyview Drive-In, but we have to go to his office first." It was like that sometimes in my family because my dad ran his own business. Well, the family after dinner, Mom, Dad, and us 4 kids piled into a 1945 Pontiac. My little brother, he sat in the front between Mom and Dad, and now I'm sitting in the back in the middle where I can put my feet up on that hump in the Pontiac. So we drove down to his office. It was on 16th Street. Now this is in Sacramento. 16th Street, we drove there. That was before the freeway went overhead. We got there and my mom was disturbed. She told my dad, "Dale, that the light's on in there." And he said, "Oh, I'm sure it's the renter. I rented out to a new guy today and we're going to need that rent money to pay the loan off, to pay off some of the more of the loan." And I gave him a key. He's going to pay us in just a couple of days. Okay. Well, I'm in there and we're walking up to the office. I was proud of my dad because look, his name is on the window. B. Dale Eastburn, Public Accountant. Yes. His office, we started to go inside and Dad let us in. His office has 4 desks. He doesn't need 4 desks. So he's got one for Mom, one for him, one for himself. And he's got 2 extra ones. That's what he rents out. His office has typewriters, black typewriters, and it's got adding machines, Adler adding machines, and there's a paper roll that scrolls down under the desk. He's got a 64 key calculator. Oh, and in the back room, a stinky mimeograph. Ooh, and a Coke machine. We filed into his office, and I saw that man. Oh, he had scruffy shoes, stain on his shirt, and a big mustache. Oh, he seemed kind of distracted, disturbed when he walked in. Mr. Eastburn, I'm measuring my space, and I'll be moving in the morning. I saw him kick an empty box under a desk. Now, my dad knows how to take care of 4 little kids, and he handed us a nickel. We went straight to the back room to put it in the Coke machine, but I couldn't reach, so I handed it to Big Sis. She helped me. She put that coin in, clink, 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 thud. She handed me that Coke, but now I can't open it, sis. She opened it up for me. Oh, the foam just went up into my nose. Oh, but we liked the Coke. That was fun to have. It was a treat for us. So we're in the office, we're drinking our Coke, and then, the other thing the kids play with? The chairs. Oh, yes. We always have it in order. Big sister, big brother, me, then little brother, always in that order. We start with my sister. She gets in the office chair, and we siblings spin her around and around. And then it's my big brother's turn, and he gets a spin. Then it's my turn. So I get up. I'm just 5. I get up in that chair, and I hold on to the arms of those chairs, of that chair. And I hold on so tight that the black tweed just digs into the palms of my hands. Oh, I hold on really tight because I know it's coming. And those kids spin me around and around and around. Oh, it's tickled my stomach. And it was fun. Then it's my little brother's turn, and he clambers up. He's 4. He clambers up in there, and he's holding his Coke, and he's holding the chair really tight. And we big siblings, we start spinning him around and around and around and around and around and around. And oh, it was fun. And we're all laughing. And then, oh my gosh, he just spun right out of the chair. We're still laughing. And then, oh my gosh, the Coke bottle broke. And he's crying, and he's holding his neck, and oh, blood. We got Mom. She runs over and looks and sees my little brother down there. Dale, we're going to have to take him to emergency. And my dad turns to that man and said, Mr. Watch the kids. We'll be back just as soon as we can. And that man said, oh, Mr. Eastburn, but Mr. Eastburn, they were out. Gone. They left. And there we were, 3 kids with this man. Well, my big sister, she knows what to do. She got us over to a desk, and we got out some paper, and we started playing hangman and tic-tac-toe. And then my sister, one time she asked that man, she said, would you like to play with us, mister? And he said, no. I thought, oh my gosh, I guess he doesn't like to play hangman. Well, we just played some more and didn't know quite what to do. It seemed like a long time, and it was. They finally came back. And my little brother Wayne, he had a bandage on his neck. And Mom said, he was lucky because the nurse said that piece of glass went right by his blood vessel. Oh, well, we didn't get to go to the drive-in that night. We had to go straight home and straight to bed. That was a Friday night. In the morning, Dad got up and went to work Saturday morning, and he came back right away. That was unusual. I heard him talking to mom in the kitchen. Evelyn, all the equipment from the office is gone. And she got all upset. She said, oh my goodness, Dale, do you know how much it's going to cost us? But I mean, we got to replace all that equipment before tax season. What are we going to do? And Dad says, I know. Did you call the police? Yes, Evelyn, I called the police and they came over and they took a report and they asked me about other people. And I told them I just rented the office to that man. And Evelyn, that man never came in today. Oh my gosh, I gave him a key. And that's what the policeman said. Mr. Eastburn, there's been no robbery. You gave him a key. Oh my gosh, that was the day, a day to remember. To this day, I remember it. And, I think for many years, I could think there was an old man around Sacramento who I was babysat by this man who was a burglar. But you know what? That man walking around town, he could never tell the story about the day he was going to burglarize and ended up babysitting. That's my family story. Sarah is muted. You're still muted.
Thank you.
Did we always share? I asked, we're on a double picture on mine. Did we stay double picture the whole time? I don't know. Did Marion get spotlighted correctly? Oh, good. Okay.
Okay. Our third teller is Alicia Mary Rettes. Oh, my tongue did it. Yay. Okay. She was born and raised in San Diego, California. She was lucky enough to have parents who loved to visit national, state, and historic parks. She grew up in a bilingual family, and all of that has sparked her fascination with cultural diversity and natural history. She resides in the unceded land of the Coast Miwok in Marin County. She has participated in the running of many museums and an archaeological preserve and the Sierra Foothill Storytelling Guild. Most people in the storytelling world know her for telling indigenous tales which honor the original inhabitants and their lands. And she is just now beginning to share her original works and personal stories. Tonight, she's going to share with us, or this afternoon, a poem that she wrote with her brother Fred, Alice the Adventurer. They wrote it just after their mother transitioned into the spirit world. And she shares that personal family story in poem with us today. Alicia.
Thank you. Born in 1921 and growing up in the Depression era, my mother, Alice Effie Johns Rettes, flourished into many roles. A hydraulic welder in the Legion of Rosie the Riveters, an award-winning artisan of baskets, quilts, and costumes. She was a master gardener, an accomplished master gardener of building beautiful gardens of fruit trees, vegetables, tropical flowers, and exquisite roses. Alice was an honored educator and counselor for the San Diego City Schools for 31 years and an honored volunteer docent for the Balboa Park Museums in San Diego. She married Federico Ricardo Rettes, a Mexican citizen and rancher in the 1940s, when bigotry was so deep, her blood family refused to attend her own wedding. By the 50s, she was a single parent with 3 children. At night, she worked as a waitress at the El Cortez Hotel. During the day, she attended San Diego State College and earned her teaching degree. Alice loved traveling, both for pleasure on luxury liners and as a volunteer field researcher for the San Diego Field Research Foundation. I joined her on one of those expeditions in 1992, camping in the foothills of the Sierra Madres in Sonora, Mexico, where we helped to preserve the art and culture of the Mayo people. Together, my mother and I produced an English-Spanish documentary and donated it to the Mayo Cultural Center. Oh, another expedition. She joined the evolutionary ecological expedition to Australia to study the sex life of a nutmeg tree. Alice kept a magnet that said, "Life without music would be a mistake." She loved to play the piano and to sing. And so this is how my poem will begin. Around the world, Alice did go on trains or river rafts. She would just flow. Alice traveled in a Model T Ford on wood planks across the Mojave Desert floor. She flew in the first jumbo jets, then rode a camel in Australia, camping in canvas tents. In the outback she'd be, for science, counting rain beetles on a nutmeg tree. She paddled a birch canoe and flew in a monoplane too. Oh, she enjoyed luxury liners with her mighty fine diners. At 75, she went into overdrive, racing at 130 miles with Parnelli Jones. He said she was going too slow, but she gave it a go, driving and laughing in the sweetest of tones. Now, Lady Luck favored her with surprises. She'd buy 10 tickets and win 6 of the prizes. Crossword puzzles followed her around. She loved to solve them like kids love a good clown. Alice was never one to be idle and a wizard with a needle. She made award-winning crafts as if it was an easy task. Water skiing, tide pooling, boating. Her love for the ocean was big, no fooling. Sharing with children was simply a must, and she did it without a fuss. To the seashore, she would drive them in her yellow Dodge Dart wagon, exploring the tide pools and the marine life inside them. And oh, how she loved her seaside home and playing her baby grand with its beautiful tone. Her ruby red roses were stunning. And it was nice sitting on the lawn, just sunning. She hosted wonderful parties for her family and many a friend. Such good food and live music. We wish it would never end. But really, it doesn't, you see, because the spirit of Alice the Adventurer is in the hearts of you and in me. She's flying in the heavens, laughing and singing with every star. Oh, Alice, she's on the greatest adventure by far.
You did it.
I did it. It felt great. Thank you so much for doing it.
Okay, our next teller is Diamond. She's a frequent teller at our Delta Wordweavers group.
And our next storyteller is Sharon Elwell. She was in the Santa Rosa area as a part of Do Tell Story Swap, and she continues, even though she flew the coop up north, and she now lives in Bremerton, Washington. So we welcome her. And just like she became new in town up there, she even has a story for us today called new in town about a different family. Sharon, tell us about your story.
Well, this is a little story. You may have heard this before because after it happened, so many people called other people to tell them about it. What happened was Carolyn and her husband moved to a small town. And she was really worried that she would never get to know anyone there. Her husband had business associates, he had coworkers, but their kids were grown and gone. And she didn't have a dog to walk, and she couldn't imagine how she could possibly get acquainted with anybody. And then she saw an ad for the dinner club, a group that put 4 couples together to cook and share meals with each other once a month, each in their turn. So she was very excited. So she took that paper and signed up right away, and they went to their first dinner, and she liked it very much. The people were friendly, the food was good, and she thought this is an ideal way to get acquainted with others. So she attended that first one and then the second one, and then signed up for the third one. Well, when it was her turn to cook, she was a little worried, trying to figure out exactly the right menu, and she looked at a lot of different recipes. She decided Italian food was too ordinary, Chinese food was too difficult, Vietnamese food might be unfamiliar to some people. She couldn't figure, and finally decided to make a pot roast, just as she had always made it for her own family and the way her mother made it. She was going to do a heritage meal, and that turned out to be just perfect. Her guests all commented on how lovely her table setting was and how delicious the meal was. The meat was perfectly cooked. She was actually humming as she carried the plates into the kitchen to pick up the desserts. She had carefully set the 8 desserts out on the counter and had made homemade hand-whipped whipped cream to put on top of each. When she got into the kitchen and put the plates down, she saw that the cat was on the counter and that he had taken a lick from every single one of those dollops of whipped cream that were on the counter. What could she do? She had nothing else. She didn't have enough whipped cream to replace it. And she knew if she wiped it off, you could see that something had been there and it wasn't there anymore. She was desperate. She finally decided to just take a knife and re-swirl those dollops of whipped cream so they looked like nothing had happened to them, and she served them to her guests. Every one of them commented on how much better freshly whipped cream was than the stuff you get out of a can, and how perfect her dessert was. Whew, she felt that she had dodged a bullet. When she went back into the kitchen with plates, and she saw that cat snoozing by the door, she was still so mad at him that she tossed him out the back door. He could spend the night outside for all she cared. And so she went about, cleaned everything up, and decided she was too excited to clean up, to sleep and do it in the morning. So she stayed up, washed all the dishes, cleaned the kitchen. She was happy with herself. When she took the trash out the back door to put it in the big garbage can, there was the cat, dead on the doorstep. And whatever killed that cat might kill her guests as well. So she made another desperate decision. She called each of those households and confessed what she had done. And then she called her husband out of the bedroom where he had just dropped off to sleep. And they all met down at the emergency room where each of those 8 people had their stomachs pumped. And then she went home in deep, deep despair. Well, the next morning, just as she woke up, there was a knock early on the back door. And when she opened it, her neighbor stood there. And he said, I didn't want to bother you last night. I saw that you had guests, but something terrible happened. I didn't see and I didn't notice. And I ran over your cat and killed it last night. And I'll do anything. I will buy you the most expensive cat in the world. I will replace your cat. And Carolyn said, you know, I may have to take you up on that offer. I think I'm going to need a cat. It may be a long time before I have any friends here.
Good story.
That's good. Kept our interest and like, oh my gosh, what is she going to do now? And then a surprise. Good movement through a story.
Yeah, I love the way you take this on this journey, and it could go anywhere at any time. And I'm just waiting for the when's that little twist gonna come? I love listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next storyteller is Mark.
Thank you, Marion. I didn't really come prepared to tell today, but I have a story about a goodbye. And I'm afraid that Alicia and Beverly have probably heard it. If so, I hope you enjoy hearing it again. My grandmother, as I accidentally said earlier when I thought you were calling on me, we had this very special relationship, and it was unconditional love. When I was a child, I was in grammar school, and to experience this, which wasn't at home with my alcoholic parents, was quite a fabulous thing for me. Oh, I should mention the background possibly. This is because it's May, and I hope many people celebrated with you Star Wars Day. I hope you heard many people say, May the 4th be with you. That's why I have this background. When I was a little boy, and my grandmother and I got along so famously and loved each other unconditionally, she got a sliver in her hand one day. It wasn't just a little hard to see sliver, it was a significant sliver, and her finger looked significantly unhappy. And so my parents, of course, offered to remove the sliver. And Grandma said, no, I want Mark to do it. And Grandma and I knew that we could never hurt each other. And so here I am fumbling, in the grammar school, trying to hold the magnifying glass and the tweezers and her finger, and trying everything I could not to hurt my precious beloved grandma. And I know my parents could have done a better job. I know they had better dexterity, but somehow I managed to get that sliver out, and she never felt an ounce of pain. And that was the nature of our relationship. Fast forward to when I was in college. I went to college where she lived, in her nursing home where her kids put her. And I loved her, and she me every bit as much when I was now 19 in college. And so every Saturday I would go to the extended care living place where she lived, and I'd want to take her out to lunch. And all she ever wanted was a plain hamburger, just a patty and 2 pieces of bun, and that was it. And I offered, Grandma, I'll take you anywhere you want to go, any kind of food you want, and she just had to have that plain hamburger every time. And we talked, and she didn't have much to talk about living where she lived, but I had a lot to talk about, being a kid in college, just left home and just trying to experience the world. And so I would talk about, trying to get a retread tire from my car, or a girlfriend, or studies I was having trouble with, or professors, or whatever, my part-time job. I talked about all these things, and she was a great listener, and the love continued. Every time we would get together for that lunch, she would tear a scrap off of a piece of paper somewhere and write something on it and stuff it in my shirt pocket. And when I would get home, it was a Bible verse, chapter and verse, and I'd get out the Bible and look it up. And every time the verse that I read comforted me, or spoke to me, or gave me encouragement, or whatever it was I needed at that time. She really knew her Bible, and she really knew her grandson, and she was compassionate and loving as anybody could be. I never got the same Bible verse twice. Well, eventually she passed away, and eventually we went to her memorial service. And I had known since I was a little boy that I was her favorite grandson. She had about a dozen grandchildren, my cousins. And I knew all my life from that very early age before the sliver that I was her favorite grandchild, but it wouldn't do to tell the others. That wouldn't be kind. And here we were at her memorial service, and all of our parents went to their table for the refreshments afterwards. And all of my cousins in our age group, we went to our table for the refreshments afterwards. And poor little Kathy, my cousin Kathy, was just beside herself. She was just sobbing. She just could not be comforted. She was just taking it so hard, the loss of our beloved Ma Berry. And through the sobs, she let it slip accidentally that she knew that she was Ma Berry's favorite grandchild. And when that came out, my eyes looked up, and I looked at all the other eyes of my dozen cousins around that table, and their eyes were open up and looking all around the table at the rest of us. Turns out that Grandma Berry had somehow, without words, she had convinced each and every one of her grandchildren that we were her favorite, and it just wouldn't do to tell the others. And so that was a goodbye that I'll never forget. And thank you for letting me share that story with you. And she's my inspiration of being the kind of a grandparent and parent that I hope to be. She's my role model. Thank you.
You're welcome. Everybody, please unmute. And yes, be a good role model. Yeah, all these stories are giving us inspiration, positive thoughts in this very difficult time. And we're busy, but we have to remember other people, caring about them locally, family, across the world here. It's a difficult time. So when the spotlight's not on, I guess it's, does it tell just the speaker or maybe gallery? Probably the speaker. But we're going to be ending the recording shortly, but thank you. Let's just do that right now. Thank you one and all for coming from far away to listen to our recording of the Delta Wordweavers on May 8th. So come next month. The Wordweavers has a Hamfara workshop in June. I have no July. And then we have some more you can look at on the SAC website. Look for all the swap groups and our schedules on the SAC website. Thank you and good night to those who are in here. Bye.
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 Thank everyone
Good
for
night,
coming.
everyone.
Thank you for the
Thanks, folks.
stories.
Nice.
Thank you so
Goodbye,
much for
everybody.
hosting.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for letting me come. I really appreciate it.
You look like you're feeling better, Beverly.
I am.